Hello, everybody. Good day. My name is Natalia Hansen from Humane Canada's Summit for Animals. Happy to be here with you all for another live stream edition featuring some of our Summit for Animals speakers. And it is my honor today to chat with a lady from Toronto Wildlife Center. We don't often talk about wildlife or really other species beyond dogs and cats. And I think that we should spotlight these animals because Humane Canada really advocates for all animal species, not just dogs and cats. So I'm excited to moderate this conversation. The goal of these live chats is to give you, the viewers, especially the live viewers, an opportunity to interact with some of our conference speakers, ask questions, and clear maybe any doubts that you may have on any particular subject. So today we will be talking about bird window collisions. I've witnessed more than one collision and it's really heartbreaking, but I will let Victoria talk about it. So without further ado, please allow me to introduce our guest and then we'll bring her out. I'm excited to introduce our next speaker, Victoria Badham from the Toronto Wildlife Center. Victoria first joined Toronto Wildlife Center's Wildlife Hotline team in 2011, bringing a background in environmental policy and urban studies from the University of Toronto. Over the years, she's responded to thousands of calls about wildlife emergencies and urban wild animals, sparking her passion for public education and awareness. Now, with a Master of Education, Victoria manages the Hotline Education and Outreach programs at Toronto Wildlife Center, working to inspire people of all ages to better understand and connect with the wild species that share our neighborhoods. All right, let's bring you out. Hi, Victoria.
Hello. Nice to be here.
Welcome. Nice to see you. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for being here. And once again, I'll say it. If you're watching live and if you have any questions for Victoria, please type them in the chat. The goal is to interact with you. Victoria is one of our over 110 speakers at the Summit for Animals. The conference is sold out, but I still encourage you to go to the website. It's humanecanada.ca/summit. It's right here on the screen at the bottom, and you can read her full bio. I had to condense it for the sake of time. Very impressive. All of our speakers are fantastic, and you can get an idea of the types of sessions and speakers that you get to see at the conference. All right, Victoria. So let's start from the beginning. So, why don't
Mhm.
you tell us about Toronto Wildlife Center? What is your role there? What does a normal work day look like for you? Give us an overview, please.
Yeah, thanks so much. So, Toronto Wildlife Center opened in 1993. So, we've been operating for over 30 years as the only wildlife rehabilitation center in the city of Toronto. So, as you can probably imagine, we have a very high human population in the city of Toronto, but we also have a lot of green space and lots of areas that wildlife call home. And because there is sort of this crossover between where people live and where wildlife live, wildlife can face a lot of threats as a result of that. So that is why we exist. We admit the last few years up to about 6,500 sick, injured, or orphaned wild animals every year, and the demand for help is much higher than that as well. We're a very busy organization. We receive about 40,000 calls from members of the public every year that are seeking help with a wildlife situation. So that can be anything from finding, an animal that has been hit by a car on the road to nesting geese, which we're about to get into that season, where they've nested on a rooftop and the babies can't get down, they're trapped, to a hawk that's caught in kite string 50 feet up in a tree. We provide information on all of those types of things, and then just more general information as well, as like, why are there rabbits in my yard, or what kind of bird seed is the best for these birds. So there's a wide range. We're also really proud to have the Ontario's only full-time wildlife rescue program. So these are specialized staff members that can go out and catch these animals that are in really difficult or dangerous situations. that we really couldn't ask members of the public to handle. You may see my cat making a guest appearance during my talk today. Sorry about that.
Let her, please. We're happy.
Yeah, I'm sure here nobody minds. So, um,
No.
yes, and then I run our education, so our hotline as well as our education program, and so that includes, like I talked about, all those calls coming in through our wildlife hotline, as well as going out into our community to schools, to community groups, seniors residences, any kind of clubs and organizations, and just sharing information about about the work that we do, teaching children and youth, age appropriate ways that actions that they can take to make our cities safer for wildlife as well. So yeah, and then of
Okay.
course I haven't even touched on our rehabilitation and veterinary programs yet. So so those are the fabulous people that actually take care of and treat our wildlife. So thousands of patients every single year. And just to know that, over 1,000 of those patients are birds that have hit on windows. So, a really substantial substantial number of our patients are coming in as a result of this particular problem. So our wildlife rehabilitation team does the day-to-day care of the animals, a lot of assessments, provides the proper enclosures and diets, and provides checkups on them to make sure that they're progressing. And then, of course, our veterinary team, comes up with treatment plans, provides surgeries, does assessments of the animals to see how they're progressing, and that kind of thing. So it is it's quite a large operation actually, and it does take a lot of work to take care of all these wild animals that are at our center.
Sounds like it. Wow. So some things that stood out to me. Ontario's first, did you say wildlife rehabilitation program?
We were not the first wildlife rehabilitation center. However, we're the only one in
The
Toronto, but we are
only.
the only one to have a wildlife rescue program. And people use
Right.
that word rescue a little bit differently. Some people refer to that as the bringing in of animals. For our program specifically, it means the specialized team we have that are able to carry out more challenging captures of animals. So like deer, or tree climbing, swift water rescue, going out on ice and lakes, those kinds of rescues.
Wow. This
Yeah.
is so neat. Wow, your team is doing fantastic work. Seriously, my respects. And I'm so glad that you are coming to the Summit for Animals in a couple of weeks to represent Toronto Wildlife Center. So you were saying about 1,000 of these animals that come in are birds that have hit windows, have collided against windows. So, can you tell us a little bit about what is happening with wild bird populations and how they are declining due to this issue of striking windows?
Yeah, so it is a really big problem. So in Canada alone, it's estimated that between 16 and 42 million birds die each year solely as a result of collisions with glass or windows. So that's an awful lot of birds. And we know that there was a study that came out only a few years ago that found that there are almost 3 billion fewer birds in North America than there were in 1970. Now, that's the result of a lot of threats, including habitat loss. But, we can see that populations across most species are actually going down. Now, windows, there's not, only one or two types of bird that hit a window. Like, it's non-discriminatory, right? So the problem is that birds can see what is reflected in glass. They can see what's
Mhm.
on the other side of transparent glass, but they can't
Mm.
see the glass itself. So as they're flying, often very, very quickly, as they're traveling, as they're evading predators, as they're heading toward a food source or a shelter source, they collide with these windows as they're attempting to get to trees or bushes, or wherever they're headed to. So so it's a really big problem. And the downtown core of Toronto and other big cities does get a lot of attention because a lot of them do hit the high rises, especially during migration season, which we are currently in right now for our spring migration. And and a lot of birds do hit there, and it's a really big problem. But it's actually been shown that more birds actually hit low rise buildings simply because, there's
Really.
just more of them, right? Downtown core is pretty confined, and there's just more. So both are a problem. We don't want to suggest that only the high-rise buildings are a problem. Our homes, low-rise buildings are just as much of a problem for these birds as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, that's sad. Yeah, and I can imagine in a city like Toronto, for example, the downtown area, which is so, like you said, it's so confined and there are so many buildings, that must happen there often. So thankfully, there is a place like Toronto Wildlife Center with people like you and your team who are ready to help when these incidents happen. And I know in terms of the species, you're going to have other panelists in the session who may be able to speak more about this in greater length. So, can you tell us a little bit about your co panelists? There are four of you, and there is one moderator. Who are they, and how did this panel come to be?
Yeah, so I'm not sure about the others, to be honest, in terms of how they got on board with the panel. But for me, Kathleen Johnson, who's the executive director of the Calgary Urban Species Response Team, sorry, well, the hard one to get out,
It's a
and also
mouthful.
yeah, and the founding member of Bird Friendly Calgary contacted me and was aware of this conference and thought that it would, as you suggested in the beginning, suggested it would be a really good opportunity to raise the issues of issues that are affecting our wild neighbors, specifically birds in this case, and the birds and windows issue in general. So she reached out to myself, and then as well as Michael Majeur, who is the co-founder and executive director of FLAT, which is the Fatal Light Awareness Program Canada. And Michael has a lot of experience specifically with this issue. That this is what their organization focuses on solely, is the issue of birds hitting glass and how to prevent that. So they do have volunteers that go out every migration season and patrol high risk building areas, and they collect the birds that unfortunately have died as a result of the collision, and they keep data on that. But they also contain the ones that are still alive and transport them to Toronto Wildlife Center for treatment. So their efforts have saved thousands of birds over the years, and they have had some success in convincing some buildings to incorporate bird friendly measures on their windows as well. And I know they also look more at looking at changes at a higher level, right? So at the building code level, and they do a lot of work in terms of that as well. And so we also have
Okay.
Dr. Brendan Samuels joining us, who is the research coordinator for FLAP, and his work focuses a lot on preventing bird building collisions, as well as Paul Grollo, who is the vice president of Feather Friendly Technologies, which is a company that has been dealing with this bird glass collision issue for a long time and offers products to make windows safer for birds. So they'll be able to provide that sort of preventative perspective. And then, of course, Autumn Jordan is with Nature Canada, and she will be our moderator. And she also has a long history of working on issues affecting wildlife, as well as managing the Bird Friendly Cities program as well. So we have,
Yeah,
a lot
thank
of
you.
different people on our panel coming. I'm coming more from the wildlife rehabilitation perspective, but a lot of bird experts, a lot of people working specifically on this issue as well.
Thank you for mentioning each one of them by name. I really appreciate
Yeah,
that. That's very
of course.
nice of you to share that spotlight with your co-panelists. And I want to actually take this opportunity to give a very well-deserved shout out to Kathleen Johnson from the Calgary Urban Species Response Team, because she reached out to our team. I think she attended our conference in 2018 in Calgary, and she sent us an email. I think it was probably in the summer last
Mhm.
year when we were ready to open our call for speakers, which is when we say, hey, we are looking for session proposals. If you have experience or insights on these topics, submit a proposal. And that's how we start curating the program. And she reached out and she asked us for a meeting because she was such a big advocate for birds and for this issue of bird window collisions. And she explained to us what she had in mind. And long story short, yeah, she gathered all of you together, and now this is happening, this is coming to fruition. So thank you so much to you, Kathleen, if you watch this replay, because your advocacy and your passion to speak up on behalf of birds is, it's very beautiful to see somebody who is passionate enough to take the time to say, hey, I really want to do this. Because again, there are certain species that I find sometimes are a little bit overlooked, and they still need advocating for. They still need people to speak up for them and to help us realize what threats they're facing. And you just mentioned some, Victoria, the windows, urban development, etc. And there are a variety of other issues. So thank you for that, and looking forward to this panel. And what you said as well really stood out for me was the different perspectives. So you're coming from the wildlife rehabilitation perspective, and then your other panelists will also share their points of view. So it's really important when we have an issue or a topic to really examine it from various angles. So really awesome. Just wanted to say that out there.
Excellent.
And you were also talking about some of your panelists speaking on some of the experience that they have to help prevent these collisions. So I would love for you to share a couple of tips that we can start implementing today in our homes, in our office buildings, to help prevent these birds from hitting windows.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, with it depends on the type of building in terms of how easy it is to mitigate the strikes. But I do like, teaching people about this issue because, especially in our homes, it's kind of an easy fix to make our windows safer for birds. It's something that we can do immediately that will have an immediate a benefit. So the big reason why, like I had already mentioned, the reason why birds have hit windows a lot of the time is because it's either reflecting the environment around them or they are trying to fly through the glass to an object such as a tree or a bush or something that they see on the other side of the glass. So what we recommend is putting up a visual marker so that birds know that there is something there. Now, we know that people have actually known about this issue for a long time because we've seen those black bird decals on windows for decades, right? People would put those up as a way of, letting birds know that there's something there. I think more of an idea to scare them away that there was a bird in the window. The problem with those is that they don't cover up enough space on the glass or on the window, because birds will try to fly through some very small spaces depending on the type of bird it is. So best practices is to cover as much of the window as possible with no more than a couple of inches between decals, right? We don't want very much space in between them. We don't want to give the bird anywhere for that they can squeeze through. So what people are beginning to see a little bit more, even on commercial buildings, is these white or black dots. So these are, this is an application that can be put on the outside of the window. It's just a series of dots. They're actually not very visible to the naked eye. You have to kind of look closely to really notice that they're there, especially when you're on the inside of the building. And that lets the bird know they have great eyesight. They can see that those dots are there, and that's enough to let those birds know that there is a surface there. But there are other means of making the window safe. Again, just it has to be applied on the outside of the window. So sometimes like dangling cords, different types of cords can be placed on the outside of the window, different types of screens, like decorative decals. Like some people put beautiful art decals all over the window and it looks beautiful. And in a pinch, what I always like to recommend is a bar of soap, because sometimes people are unaware that a window is a problem for birds until the sun is hitting it in a certain way one day, and then we get a call on our hotline that 3 birds have hit that window in one day. The person doesn't know what to do, so grab a bar of soap and just start drawing lines, an inch or two
No
apart
way.
on the outside of the window, And that can be a really good temporary fix until you're able to apply a more permanent solution. Yeah, and we've had a few calls like that where we're like immediately put soap. So oftentimes people think soap, oh, to wash the window, but actually dirty windows are safer for birds because they're less reflective. So yeah, and that is something that can be, anybody can do this. We teach kids a lot through our education program.
Mm.
We make homemade window decals to put all over the outside of the window. So lots of different options. The most important piece, though, is that you're covering the entire window.
Wow.
Another important point
Cool.
that is helpful as well, a lot of people do have bird feeders, and often
Yeah.
bird feeders are placed near windows. But the distance can be problematic if it's more than a meter away from the window. The best practice is actually have it close as possible to the window, so that if birds suddenly get spooked away, that they don't have enough momentum built up to hit hard on the window, because that's what happens sometimes if there's a feeder in the middle of a yard, a Cooper's hawk shows up to the buffet. Cooper's hawks eat small birds, just in case you don't know that. And then they'll scatter and they're building up speed, and they'll fly into a window. And there can be other various reasons why they would fly into the window, but bird feeders and a bird bath closer to the window is best practice as well. And this is all on FLAP's website for like
Mm.
exact measurements, how far apart your markers should be, how far your bird bath, how far your bird feeder should be from your windows, is all outlined on FLAP's website, flap.org. So
Thank
it's got
you.
really
Thanks
good
for saying
resources
that.
there. Yeah.
I want to say that on an Instagram here we have Safe Wings Ottawa watching, and they've tagged Flap Canada, Feather Friendly, Toronto Wildlife Center, Calgary Urban Species, and Nature Canada. You also have a comment here from a user name 400 Years of Flute, saying thank you. So I echo that as well on behalf of them to you, Victoria. Thank you for those tips. The bar of soap is really interesting. I had never heard of that. I would have never put two and two together. I wonder, maybe you know this, if window suppliers, like let's say I have my home and I'm replacing my windows or I'm building a home from scratch, do you think it's best practice for us, if we care about this, to ask the suppliers, hey, what measures do you have in place to help prevent window strikes? Do you think there's certain responsibility on window makers as well to bring this up to people's attention?
Yeah, I mean, I think there should be window makers, architects, anybody who again, the bit like people approving building development. I mean, it touches on a lot of different areas of our lives. Now, for glass makers, window makers, they may not even be sort of aware of this issue. So I think that as consumers, if we're asking them those questions, it does kind of encourage them to look at providing windows that are bird friendly. And I think that there are more options out there than I've mentioned today. And I think Dr. Samuels will likely be able to speak more to that, as well as Paul Groslo. When we're on panel, they have more expertise than I do in that area. But yeah, absolutely. I think anytime that we are trying to create change, we have to look at industry and business and where,
Yeah.
as part of that as well, for sure.
Yeah. And what you said, it's so true. I feel like businesses are probably more likely to hear from their own customers than from an organization, because they may feel like the organization has an agenda. They're here to sell me a product, they're here to push me to buy something or implement something. But if the people on the other end, the consumer, the purchasing end, say, hey, what are your best practices about this or that? I feel like they are more likely to listen and to evaluate their protocols and implement changes. So we as consumers, we have a lot of power in our hands, even if we don't believe that. So yeah, I would highly recommend that people go on the flap.org website. Like Victoria said, they have some resources on what you can start doing at home today to help prevent birds from hitting your windows. It's so sad. The times when I've witnessed that, my heart is breaking, because they're also petrified, right? So it's not like they're sitting there, okay, catch me human and put me outside. There's a lot of stress going on, and you're
Mhm.
trying to catch them and help them, and they're freaking out. It's so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
In the
And
instances where I've witnessed that, I've been able to help them out though. So
yeah, and I think it is important to note that because a lot of people might say, "Oh, it flew away. It's okay. It should be fine." But we know that a lot of birds that can still fly are actually pretty critically injured. From what we see of birds coming into Toronto Wildlife Center, a lot of them can still fly, but they have head trauma. They have bleeding behind the eyes. They might have broken clavicle. Because it's usually a pretty hard impact. So we do recommend getting birds that have collided with a window to a wildlife rehabilitator if you have one near you, because it really can be the difference between life and death for them.
So you do recommend that if somebody experiences a bird collision and if they're able to catch the bird, you do recommend that they reach out to a wildlife center like the Toronto Wildlife Center if they are in the Toronto area.
Yes, I mean, and I'm not sure if people are watching this probably from outside the Toronto area. There are other wildlife rehabilitators in Ontario and in other provinces. And if you have one that's reasonably close to you, yes, I would recommend bringing the bird there. Call them first to make sure they can take it. And for containment, trying to catch it. If you have a small towel, like a tea towel, that you can drape over them gently, pick them up, put them into a cardboard box or a paper bag, and just put them in a dark, quiet place until you can get them to the rehabilitation center. Because they can give them treatment that might mitigate some of those other issues that could come up. They might fly away, but they just might fly away and pass away at a later time because their issues have not been treated. So yes, if I would say look up wildlife rehabilitators in your province, and there should be a list of licensed wildlife rehabilitators, because you do have to have permits to do the work that we do.
Mm, I bet. Yeah, for sure. Okay, thank you. Thanks for all of these tips. It's been so helpful. Even I'm learning a lot. I'm taking mental notes here. But this is just a sneak peek as to what people can expect during this panel at the Summit for Animals. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope I get to sit in on it because I'm always working behind the scenes. So sadly, I don't get to enjoy many of the sessions. But hopefully, I'll be able to make the time to do it. Lastly, Victoria, so this
Yes.
is your first time attending the Summit for Animals. Are you looking forward to it from an attendee perspective or from a speaker perspective? Anything you're looking forward to the most?
I This is my first time coming. I did not know about this conference until Kathleen Johnson brought it to my attention. So I'm really looking forward to just coming and learning about what the whole conference is about. I'm also a lover of domestic animals as well, so I'll probably be sitting in on lots of talks about cats and dogs. I'm particularly interested in building empathy through education in regarding all animals. So yeah, I'm hoping I can catch some talks on those kinds of things, and learning, so that I know what to expect for next year when I come back again.
Nice. See, this is in public record. Victoria is telling us she's coming back in 2026. We'll hold you to this, okay? You're
It sounds
saying this
great.
out loud. Publicly. Yeah, this is fantastic. Thank you for sharing that because our speakers are also attendees. They get to sit in on some sessions as well. They get to network too. So there are certain sessions or activities for speakers that you may be looking forward to meeting. And it's great what you said because you work in education as well. You work in outreach. So even a session on, let's say, Calgary Humane Society is actually doing a session on humane education, and it's about neurodiversity. So
Mhm.
you may think like, well, that's how can I apply that to Toronto Wildlife Center? But there may be a way that you can. So this is an invitation for anyone who's watching this and who is coming to the conference to really have an open mind and think and know, not think, know that there is something that you can take away from every single session that you attend, even if you don't think that it applies to your job and your role. There is something you can take away and you can make it applicable to the work that you do. Well, Victoria, we're right at the top of the hour. Thank you so much. This has been very enlightening. I know some people on Instagram were very active. So, again, Safeway in Ottawa was watching. Thank you for the work that you and your team at the Toronto Wildlife Center are doing. It's really admirable. Thank you for speaking up on behalf of wildlife. And we look forward to seeing you in just a few weeks. Time is flying. Time is flying,
I'm
and we're
excited.
talking about birds. I did not plan that.
Perfect.
Yeah, so thank you for your time and thank you to everyone for watching live, or if you're watching the replay, thank you as well for joining us and learn more about the Summit for Animals. Even though we are sold out, I encourage you to visit the website. It's humanecanada.ca/summit. That's SUMMIT. And if you did not get a chance to register for this year, there's always next year, and we would love to see you. So add your name to our conference email list so you can find out when and where we are hosting the 2026 conference. Victoria, any final closing words?
Oh, closing final words. I think, just it's a wonderful time of year to watch birds coming through. If you're seeing the migrators coming through that we don't get to see year round, it's actually really exciting. But now is the time, to make those windows safe for birds. So I would say don't even wait for the conference. Check out FLAP's website now, see what you can do to make sure that your windows are safe for them as they pass through.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's a perfect way to close it. Thank you so much for your time. See you in a couple of weeks. And thanks, everybody. Stay safe and have a great day. Bye bye.